Welcome back to the Team to Beat Miami Heat podcast. My name is Amir. Before I get into today's episode, I just want to thank everybody for following the podcast on Apple and Spotify. And for those of you watching on YouTube, thank you for subscribing to the channel. If you guys could like, comment, share, and subscribe, that would mean a lot to me. So for today's episode, I want to talk about free agent Gordon Hayward. So Gordon Hayward was traded midseason from the Charlotte Hornets to the Oklahoma City Thunder, and Hayward only played 3 games with the Thunder. He's 34 years old, and he didn't really fit in essentially with Oklahoma City's young roster. I thought him as a buyout candidate was going to be a good veteran presence off the bench for the Thunder that would allow them to have another capable shooter and scorer come off the bench. But for some reason, he was never into the rotation. It turned out that it wasn't a great fit, and Hayward grew frustrated with his role by the end of the season. I don't think he even played a single second in the playoffs in both rounds. So we know Hayward will be a free agent this summer, and he could look for an opportunity elsewhere. And he talked about how he was disappointed. He said, I was obviously disappointed with how it all worked out during the team's exit interviews. This is not what I thought it would be. It was certainly frustrating. So Hayward averaged 17.2 minutes and only 5.3 points in 26 games for the Thunder. He only started in 3 of those during the regular season. Again, then he was an afterthought in the playoff rotation. So he said, I feel like as a player, I have a lot to offer. I just wasn't given much of an opportunity to do that. And I thought I was going to get that opportunity. So it is unclear at this stage of his career what he can actually do for a team. He hasn't played more than 52 games in a season since 2019, which is obviously concerning. So why should the Miami Heat consider signing him? And what is going to be his market value? Because when he did get bought out last season, he was on an expiring contract and he made 30 million last season. So he's not going to get anywhere near that. He was a buyout candidate, of course. And so I don't think he's going to be a minimum. So this might be difficult for the Miami Heat with their salary cap issues being in the first apron and almost in the second apron. So he's not going to be a guy who's making 15, 20 million a year. He's 34 years old and he's got a few good years left in him. And I can't see him making a ton of money. But either way, let's talk real quick about how he can fit on this Miami Heat team or why the Miami Heat should consider him. So first of all, just in general in his career, he's a versatile forward. He's had a pretty impressive career in the NBA. He was an all-star with the Utah Jazz, got traded to the Boston Celtics and Hornets, and he was able to showcase his offensive skills. He is an underrated playmaker. Of course, he's known for his scoring abilities. He has a smooth stroke. He averaged around 17 points per game over his career. So the biggest asset for him was that I had the ability to create his own shot. He was a 3-level scorer at one point in his career, but he's a good distributor. Like he's a good playmaker, pretty good ball handler. The best he's ever done was around 5 assists per game. Back in Utah, but he's an underrated ball handler and playmaker. He is having trouble, though, creating separation and creating his own shot, obviously, because he's 34 years old. But either way, his offensive capabilities off the bench would be beneficial for the Miami Heat. Again, versatility, like I mentioned, is one of his strengths. He could play both the small forward position or the power forward position and be that stretch 4 off the bench for the Miami Heat, assuming that Jaime Jaquez will be still coming off the bench. So Jaime would come in as the small forward. He would be playing next to Jaime Jaquez potentially if we did sign him. And then Kevin Love would be the backup center. So having those 3 off the bench could be very interesting. Adding in like a DeLon Wright if we do resign him and Jay Rich if he does pick up his option. It's not a bad bench to have. So again, another thing that he can contribute and help is just providing veteran leadership on this roster so that he'd have a strong mix of young talent with Jaime Jaquez, Tyler Hero, Niko Jovic, and they also have seasoned vets, obviously with Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo. So adding Hayward to the roster would bring experience in leadership. He's been to the playoffs multiple times. He knows what it takes to compete. So his presence could help mentor other players off the bench. Again, the biggest concerns I mentioned: injuries, Hayward's injury history, um, a lot of the setbacks that he's had over the years, is an issue. And the Miami Heat have had the issue of availability with their current roster. So he is injury prone. So that could be a challenge. So financially, again, mentioning what would he go for? The Miami Heat, the max they can offer him is the mid-level um, exception, which is like $5.2 million. So I think that's the most he's going to get. I mean, maybe a team will offer him like 6 or 7 million if they're desperate, but I can't see him making much more than that. I don't see him making double digits anymore at this point in his career. Even though he is a capable scorer, like he did average almost 15 points per game with the Hornets. Um, that dropped to 5 when he joined the Thunder. But last season, 15 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, 1 steal. Shot only 32% from three with the Hornets, but he shot 37% overall again in his career. So his strengths are 3-point shooting, of course, and his ability to score. But again, he's 34 years old. He's getting up there. Not sure what the Miami Heat are willing to offer. But in conclusion, I think he could be a good piece for this Miami Heat team as long as he's cheap and affordable. He's not going to move the needle. He's not going to like turn us into a championship contender, but he could be a good replacement for Haywood Highsmith or Caleb Martin if they do walk. Again, we need to then sign someone who's more defensive minded because that's not his strength at all. So it's going to be hard to completely fulfill what Caleb Martin and Haywood Highsmith offered defensively, but offensively, he has a bigger bag than both of those guys, especially Haywood Highsmith. So if we do lose any of those guys, he could be a good replacement offensively, but we would definitely need to re-sign a DeLon Wright or someone else who's more defensive minded that can make up for that. But anyway, let me know what you guys think. Do you think signing Gordon Hayward, if he's affordable, is the right move and bringing him off the bench to help us offensively? Let me know your thoughts. Thanks, guys.